Ghost Tactical Studios. Welcome to Tactical Tuesday, live on YouTube and simulcasting on GunChannels.com. Make sure to check out our complete catalog of podcasts on iHeartRadio, iTunes, GunStreamer.com, and PodBean. What is going on, my Ghost Squad? Welcome to Tactical Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, October 2nd, 2018. We are live as always on YouTube and simulcasting as always on GunChannels.com. When we get this done, we will have the video portion and everything over on GunStreamer and UGEtube and GunTube.org. And obviously, we'll take the audio and pull it as a podcast, and we'll put it on your favorite podcast hosting apps like PodBean and iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere else I can put my stuff off. So it is what it is. But let's say hello to everybody over at GunChannels.com. You've got the Gizzards over there, and Sean's over there, and DT was over there earlier, and we've got a nice little crowd out there. And let's say hey to everybody over at the YouTube side. We got Gun Loving Grand Paul Stanley. Grim was out there, and Warsaw Patriots out there. Stormtrooper, got my eye on you, young man. Got my eye on you. Don't mess up. I got friends in very weird places. Leonidas of Spartan is out there. What's going on, Leo? He says evening. Hemi's out there. What's going on, Hemi? Mateo, Semper Fidelis brother. D-Temp's out there. Recoil Junkies out there. RL, the Black Cat Outdoors, Gunpowder Beauty, Mike Sykes, Ashley's out there. She says she's having a little issues with her laptop. If it doesn't work, you can jump on your cell phone. If you've got like earbuds or something, just push the link and it'll work on your cell phone. If you can't get in, I understand, but we'll see if we can get you in here, Ashley. Einstein's out there, General Relativity. David Bowling, the Kingpin, is checking in, he says. Alaveris, the Tactical Pickle. I think he's got a new nickname from Clover. I think it's a California Cucumber. Not real sure, but we'll see how that plays out. Mike Sykes is out there. 37 Money Train. What's going on, my man? Midnight Range TM, the Mohawk Boy. He says he might be able to join tonight if I link him. I'll send you a link, my man. I'm not used to being able to jump in on Tuesdays, but I will definitely send you one. MW Tactical is out there and in here, obviously. The Travi Collective. My goodness, they're still around. We're just like a bad virus. Just the Travi Collective are still out there. JJ's out there. Brenda Osborne's out there. Hello, Brenda. Welcome back, young lady. I got your email, and we definitely need to get together either for the show and also for the podcast possibly. I'm going to send you an email probably tomorrow, but we'll do that. Guitar Man Pete's out there. Jeff Tack's out there. So before we do anything, I do want to send this over to Midnight Range. So let me send this link to him real quick. Remember, I'm a Marine. I eat crayons for dinner, so I can only do one thing at a time. I'm not the brightest man in the world. Guys, we're going to be talking about the gun community. We've had some stuff come up with President Trump in the last 24 hours or so. So we're going to talk about what's happened in the last year since the Las Vegas murders. And if you have any comments or questions for me or the panel, go ahead and tag one of us. If you really want to, go ahead and email it at live@ghosttactical.us, and we're going to try to get that in here. And Sparky, what's going on, Sparky? Rich White, the 1%. The 1% is in the hizzy. Speaking of Trump, the 1% is here. So let's run through the panel and say hello to everybody. We've got from South Carolina. We've got from MW Tactical. We got Michael Woodland. What's up, Mike?
Not too much. How's it going for you?
Life is good, man. Life is good.
Hey, if it was any bad, I don't think we'll all be here, right?
That's correct. That is very, very true. And if life is bad, then maybe we can give you a little sunshine for an hour or so, and we'll see what happens.
That's true. But in the meantime, thanks for having me.
Yeah. You doing all right? How was your weekend?
My weekend was fun. Went shooting with some friends. Did some writing. Worked on a video that I put out today. So check it out and tell me what you think about it.
Sling, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the D3 Sling, the Haley Strategic.
Awesome. Ardot, I sent you an email, bud. You got a link if you want to come on in. But yeah. And from land unknown, not really sure where he is. He is right now in the midst of the 2018 Gun Show Loophole Tour. I'm not sure where he is setting anchor tonight, but G-Webs, what's going on, G? Oh, he's walking marshmallow. I love it.
Thanks for the invite.
You got it. Hi, Marshmallow. How are you doing?
I got the earbuds in, so she's ignoring everybody.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. We've got an awesome guest. He was on our show about a month or so ago, and we're not going to be talking necessarily shop. He can't talk as much shop as he wants, but I think he's out on the road doing some business. We're really, really glad to have him. We got Chris from Tactical Walls. What's going on, Chris?
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me. I'm really glad this worked out. You know, when you're rolling around and just stuck at a hotel somewhere you don't know, it's always nice to have a chance to kind of hang out with friends like this.
Well, we're glad that we could waste some time for you.
Help me kill time till bedtime. That's all I need.
That's right. That's right. Hey, you know, by the time this chat's over, we can put you to sleep very easily. So we'll see how it goes. And from Texas, the tactical leprechaun himself, the magic man, Clover Tack. What's up, my man?
Hey, good evening. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, how you doing, man?
I'm well.
Well, that's good.
All is well.
Well, that's always good to hear, man. It's always good to hear. I'm trying to figure out why this email is not going through. Travis, it kicked it back saying your email is not valid. So I don't know. I'm going to try it again and see if it works this time.
It's not valid. That's not the only thing that's not valid.
I know he's not valid, but let's see if we can get him. He said he's actually able to maybe join tonight, which is crazy because he's usually working his tail off, especially on a Tuesday night, but we're going to see how it goes. Before we get going, guys, I want to start my first PSA. So if you guys don't mind, let's do this first one real quick.
Hey Ghost Squad, this is Sky. At Ghost Tactical, we understand the rising tensions across America regarding guns and gun control. It is more important than ever to be vigilant about our Second Amendment rights. We encourage everyone to stay informed and contact your local, state, and federally elected officials to make sure they are hearing your voice. They represent you, and without your input, their votes may be vulnerable to outside influences. We ask that you actively support any gun rights organizations such as Gun Owners of America, Second Amendment Foundation, Firearm Policy Coalition, and even the National Rifle Association. We understand you may not agree with all the politics involved with some of the organizations, but we encourage you to keep up with and support as many as you can.
There you go. And with the midterm elections coming up, I mean, man, this could be an interesting one with everything that's going on out there. So what we're going to talk about, guys, is as of yesterday, it was the 1 year, I don't really call it anniversary. It was a 1 year mark of the thoughtless murders that happened in Vegas where, 52 people were killed. And it started this outrage of different things for gun control. And a year later, we can look back and see what has happened. Because I remember our initial thoughts and our initial impressions of what was getting ready to happen. And it was a little scary there for a few months. And looking back at a year later, we're going to kind of talk about what happened in the last year. Obviously, there have been other incidents in the last year that have been equally as devastating. But we're going to talk about what's going on in the gun community a year after. And let's kind of start out real quick with Mike and say, do you remember your initial thoughts when the Vegas murders happened last October? Were you nervous? Were you scared? What were your initial thoughts of what was going to happen with possible gun control?
Wasn't nervous, wasn't scared. I was just sad that another incident took place where it was a gun in relation to a mass hurting of people. But I already knew the attack was going to fuel the other side to say something that could possibly damage everybody's rights to carry legally or possess legally.
Yeah. Yeah, G, I know that you have last week you were at the Gun Rights Policy Conference, and can you kind of explain how this one was in comparison to 2017, that was prior to the Vegas murders. Was there a different feeling, a different outlook? What was the feel and thought at the GRPC?
That's a good question. They really didn't, obviously it didn't happen yet, so there was nothing to address last year. And this year, the anniversary of it was far enough removed that it really didn't come up as, you know, something that we need to worry about as far as strategy and stuff. I mean, we kind of all know, I assume, that they're going to try to milk it for as much as they can, but it wasn't as though there was like any doom and gloom because it was coming, or in anticipation of it.
Right.
At least I didn't hear any.
Now, Chris, being not only obviously a gun person and gun guy, but being in the industry, do you remember what the thought process is from the industry side, October 1st, 2017, when all this was happening? Was that a nervous time for you in the business?
A little bit. Actually have a really clear memory of when it happened, because I was in transit going to the Well-Armed Women conference last year, and I was in an airport watching it, and I just remember seeing the crowd react and being a little bummed that I was wearing a shirt with a giant AR-15 on it at the time. But you know, it was awkward. But then, you know, being at industry events for the like week and a half afterwards, the feeling was definitely there was a bit of the here we again feeling, and then a lot of debate on the validity of bump stocks, what their value is it valid to treat them as a bar, how much weight do you put on that, etc. So that was kind of the conversation immediately following.
Right. Clover, you know, I think actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think a few of us jumped on, I don't know if it was on yours, but a few of us jumped on a live stream right when it happened, and we were kind of trying to follow the information as we got it and try to decipher what was real and what wasn't. But, you know, what was your initial thought when you heard, obviously what turned out to be relatively fake news about all the weapons this guy had and all that? Remember the conspiracy theories that we had going through? What was your initial thought of, oh crap, here we go, it's another Sandy Hook and we're going to have to fight a lot of different things now?
I didn't really think so at the time, and it really didn't turn out to be that way, honestly. There was a lot of chatter, and then, you know, he, you know, did his executive memorandum, whatever it was, twice, as a matter of fact, he has. And I mean, so, you know, there's really been nothing on the forefront. Congress can't do anything. They can't push anything through on it, and they haven't been able to. So if it's going to be done, it's going to have to be done, you know, by his pen. And it's, you know, I'm sad to see that the NRA rolled on it almost immediately. We know that. And then, you know, in this latest statement, he's like, and I've already told the NRA bump stocks are gone, but yet they had him come speak at the convention, you know, so they already knew this. This isn't shocking to them. There was some deal cut somewhere, whatever. And I don't know. All of that is kind of sickening, you know.
Well, and if you remember, I mean, it's not like the NRA was always in the graces of everybody in the gun community for a long time. But that seemed to be, you know, when they put out their joint statement between Chris Cox and Wayne LaPierre, put out their statement about they believe that the ATF should look into bump stocks. It's kind of triggered the onslaught of, and I don't know if it was a mass exodus or not. Well, only time will tell as far as if they ever release the public numbers. But it was in the social media and in the realm of the gun community, there was a tremendous amount of backfire against the NRA when that happened. So I'm going to kind of go back through the room, and I'm going to start with Chris this time real quick and say, in your opinion, what has been and this is for everybody, so when you get to you'll go through the room, but what has been the biggest thing, the most, I don't know how to put this. My mind isn't very, like I said, I'm not very smart. I've got an IQ of a carrot, so you just have to forgive me. But what has been the biggest thing that's happened in the gun community since the Las Vegas incident? And is it NRA being basically, exodus by a lot of people, or is it some of the laws that have gone through? Is it the bump stock or what? Now I'm gonna let you start, Chris.
So what I've seen is, just among other manufacturers in the industry and, some of the other media that I know, et cetera, is really just kind of a scale from like just shaking their head at the NRA all the way to like full galvanized revolt against the NRA. And then a real surge in support for Gun Owners of America in particular, and then a few others. I know like Rob Pincus just took over the helm at 2AO, which is kind of exciting. That's really the biggest thing I've seen. More and more support for people like Adam Kraut running for the board, who he's a great guy and incredibly smart. So I really hope that he manages to not get they say beat, but I don't know. I don't know if I believe that or not. I hope he makes it to the board and is able to actually do something, because he's truly about freedom. And that's really what it comes down to for me, is you're either about freedom or you're not.
Right. Tar jumped in. He's a transplant from Texas up to Michigan. What's going on, Tar? How you doing, buddy?
Oh, not much. Yeah, it was sending your emails to spam, so apparently you're a spammer.
It's what it is. I'm the funny thing is I don't really like spam, but I've had several people in the last week or two say that my stuff's gone to spam, so I'm gonna have to check that out, and maybe Clover can help me out as to why my stuff goes to spam. Who knows? But no, can you since in the last year, so we'll bring you in real quick, Tar, is to you, what's the most significant thing that's happened, not necessarily in response to the Vegas, but in the last year after Vegas? What are some of the most significant things that have happened in the gun community for you?
Well, I think looking at it, there seemed to be a bigger divide come across for, your people that support the NRA and the gun community that doesn't. The biggest part of it, though, is kind of the ousting of the NRA. Now, when I say that, we all know the NRA was always bending over and giving leadway to lawmakers on kind of whatever they wanted to do. They were always negotiating on terms, saying, we'll let them pass this law. For instance, they were saying, they kind of agreed with the looking into the bump stocks and everything like that, but we're going to push for this other law. They were thinking that if they did the tit for tat thing, they were going to get what they wanted. And, the NRA has always been that way and made it look that way. They're fighting for their existence more than they're fighting for our rights. And I think after that happened and all the attempts and everything that was coming out at that point to reroute or go against the Second Amendment, and it showed that the NRA really didn't have everybody's best interest at heart. The NRA was just interested in making sure that they can continue to make money and continue to survive, and it started to become more noticeable for people that really didn't see it, and people kind of didn't take light to it. You saw a lot of people that were supporters of the NRA or big supporters of the NRA, just start to back off and kind of try to pull away from the NRA.
Yeah. And I don't know, for me, I don't know, this is just my opinion. I don't know if it was more the NRA trying to hold the money tight, or if they were afraid of becoming less powerful, or they were worried about becoming indifferent in the cause, because for the longest time they've held that we are the strong arm of the Second Amendment, and I don't necessarily think that is the case within the gun community. I think from the outside, most people that are not gun people have never heard of the Second Amendment Foundation. They have never heard of the Gun Owners of America. All they know is the NRA. So I think that they're trying to keep that stigma of we are the strong arm. But yeah, I mean, there were some heavy hitters that jumped ship. So it's very, very interesting. Clover, what do you think is the most significant thing that's happened in the gun community since last October?
Yeah, I'm on mute. Well, on a federal basis, not a whole lot of anything, honestly, which is not, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. The NRA continues to play games. I mean, they played them with Parkland, that happened later on, all of that good stuff. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, not a whole lot. I mean, I don't know. One thing that gets me, this is there's a lot of talk. I hate to bring up Kavanaugh and get on the Kavanaugh train much, but there's been a lot of talk about Kavanaugh, and okay, this is not going to help with midterms, and dump Kavanaugh because you're going to hurt the midterms and all this other stuff, and then now Trump's going to pull this. I mean, why would you even bring it up, right? And word on the street, I guess, or the whatever you want to call it, if you go out there and you peruse some stuff, is that there's been a little bit of congressional push and whatnot to bring this back up, put it back into the forefront. Of course, it's midterm, so that's probably why. So part of me wonders if these two instances are not tied together. If it's not, I'll give a little bit here by bringing this back up and getting this done, and they'll push Kavanaugh through in the process. That's his hope anyway. But you know how it is when you make deals with the devil. I don't know that that's going to necessarily be the case.
Right. No, I think that the Kavanaugh thing has brought a lot of things to the table, probably, honestly. I think that at this point, it's not just trying to get Kavanaugh, to get through Senate and confirmed. I think it's an ego thing for President Trump now, that I think for him, I'm going to get Kavanaugh through just to show everybody. And yeah, he's probably going to have to bring some things to the table that will get him confirmed. But I think you probably hit on a good point there. G, what about you? In your eyes, has there been anything significant happen in the last year since Vegas, maybe either directly or indirectly attributed to the Vegas massacre?
I mean, the obvious thing is this persecution of the bump stock, as if it's some, special standalone thing. And if anything, the discouraging part is the number of people in the community that are willing to see it go. So it's sort of maybe brought light to that divide that we knew was there between your bolt action shooters and your, occasional or seasonal gun people. And then, the I guess, commitment to just the second. So that's been amplified and focused on, which is, not helped much. We saw the Hearing Protection Act, and I forget the last version of the suppressor thing that they tried to bring by. All that just got shelved immediately. So we had some real momentum moving in a positive direction, and all that just got stifled. And everybody was willing to accept that, let's stop and defend this piece of plastic, when we, ideally, if we would all been working together, we could have just jumped right over that and kept going with our pace.
Right. Yeah, there was a comment that was made out in the chat a little while ago saying that we were so close to possibly bringing suppressors back with the Hearing Act. And national reciprocity, to some extent had a little bit of momentum. I'm not so sure that was ever probably going to get through, but it had some momentum, let's say that. And then the attention went directly to the bump stock. And I'm going to say this, and I might be way off base, but I would imagine that the vast majority of non-gun people had never heard of, nor do they have any idea what a bump fire stock was. I'd even go as far as saying there are people within the gun community that didn't know much about them. We're talking about, like you said, the bolt action guys, the FUDs, should we call them that? Probably didn't know, nor did they care about what a bump fire stock was. So it brought a device, like you said, a piece of plastic, to the forefront of the gun community that was never intended, nor was it ever, should have been ever in the forefront of the gun community. And it became the face of, for several months, even more than AR-15, became the face of evil. And I think it's hilarious that a piece of plastic in the bump stock did that, but that's kind of what happened. Mike, what about you? Anything significant happen in your eyes that's in direct correlation to the Vegas shootings?
Just like we already said, the attack on the bump stocks, but outside of the attack of the bump stocks, the wording that will lead to the infringement of other matters related to a gun or a firearm, and then the offset of bringing out what I've called fake patriots of recent. So it's been a trying time across the board, on both sides, if you will.
I want to start kind of bringing this back up because I think it needs to be mentioned that if you remember, they demonized the bump stock, they demonized semi-automatic rifles, they demonized all of these things that he supposedly had in his hotel room and was found in his hotel room. And we are literally a year later, and we have not had anything reported or released from any law enforcement agency, local, state, or federal level, that has said a thing about this. And I think it's funny that this is still being used in the media and the anti-gun groups to talk about this, and Parkland have been the two biggest things. Look, see, nobody needs these weapons of war and all of that, but yet nothing has been proven to be had in that hotel room. There's speculation. There have been snippets of inventory that might have been there, but no ballistic tests have ever come back and said what was used. If you listen to the audio that is supposedly what was being done at the time, anyone with their right mind knows that what they were saying and what you hear and accounts from the crowd are completely different. So I would say that the media has gone on, and they had about, till February 14th, they had a good 4 months of really kind of throwing hardcore anti-gun rhetoric at us because there was a large number of people in a public place. But I tell you what's also happened for me. It has also kind of redefined what the gun community is. And I think G kind of touched on this. You have the people that are the weekend warriors, the guys that like to hunt. They have a couple guns, but they really don't care as far as what happens to guns as long as they have their hunting rifles and all of that. And then it kind of separated because a lot of people, especially that I know, got a lot more political minded and more Second Amendment activist minded. If you remember, less than a month or right at a month after the Vegas shooting, we had the first 2A Capitol rallies. And some states had huge turnout, some states not so much, but it was done in about 2 weeks. And I thought that it was really cool to start seeing the people that kind of got off the sideline and got into the game when it came to being more activists and being more Second Amendment aware of what could happen to our rights and what could happen to, I can say, yeah, I mean, we all know we call them FUDs. I try not to say FUDs because I think that FUD is a term that could, I've come to learn and listen to other people that's a term that could divide us even more. So we know what they're called, but I'm trying not to say it. But because I think that that's a term that could divide us even more. We need to be
Can I add something?
Consolidated. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have a side chat, but when you were talking about the fact that they were using it against us, but I also think we lost an opportunity to be resolved in our resistance to that. Because, like you said, as far as on paper, there's nothing there that they actually have proof of anything, right? So why would we've allowed them to take this narrative and run with it with no actual evidence or any kind of real justification at all. And again, that's, I think, is a big loss for our side because, again, they've just been able to completely manipulate this side. And instead of standing in one spot and defending it, we've just parried and dodged and do our best to not talk about it or to somehow make excuses for it or something. So that part, I think, is a loss too, just in the potential that we had.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to try to do this more of a roundtable tonight. So we're not going to be as structured as having to call and so on. So anybody have any comments on that statement or anything that's been said before, go ahead and jump in. Chris, you got anything?
No, that's this has actually been really interesting. There's a bunch of things I hadn't even thought of. So right now I'm just a happy listener.
Tard, Clover, Mike, anyone? I didn't get to you, Mike. Did I? I did get to you. So, but any of you guys have any comments on what's been said so far? You want to bring up anything? Because let's try to run this more of a roundtable tonight instead of a structured deal.
I honestly believe the way to curtail anything is to actually get people out to vote. You know, you have to get out there to vote. You have to write your congressmen, your senators, and tell them which way you want them to vote and everything. Once your voice is heard, that's the only way you're really going to win the fight. Just sitting back, talking and wishing or whatever everybody's doing, the real power is in the vote.
And I think something that kind of ties together what you both have just said is it's inclusion, and we need to make our group bigger, and we're definitely not doing that by alienating folks who don't see it in the exact same lockstep way. So yeah, there are plenty of people who it is just a seasonal hobby or every couple of months hobby, and maybe they don't see it. But about education and inclusion as opposed to finding names that push people out. I think you hit on a good point with that.
Yeah, for me, it's been an interesting year because it definitely took me from being interested more in the political side of things to I'd kind of jump headfirst into the political side, because for me, it was the first time that since 2013 that there was a real challenge to our rights. And we can all sit there and say it's a bump fire stock and it's just a little gimmicky thing and all that. And it's true. I've never had one. I don't ever plan on having one. But I don't want the government to be able to tell me that I couldn't should I choose to. And I think that's what the whole thing was about, was not the device itself. It was basically the ceremonial action of, we have this thing and we're going to try to go after it. And we all know that it's a slippery slope after that. It was a gateway device, because if they felt like they got momentum with bump stocks, then what's next? And I think that's, for me, was kind of where it got scary there for a second, because we've seen now in the latest few months, even back in December is when the first one started with the ATF comments about bump stocks and the way they're writing these things, that it wasn't just bump stocks. Then you start talking about rate of fire devices and regulating something that hasn't ever been defined of what a baseline rate of fire is. So it's not just bump fire stocks. So I think it's really interesting how the political sense is going to come out. And then you have, President Trump come out in the last 24 hours talking about bump stocks are going to be gone soon. Does anybody want to discuss that quote that came out? And I know we brought it up earlier, but, we know that's probably, and I think you're right, I think it was something that had to do with Kavanaugh. But to what extent do you think it's going to be written, and how do you think it's going to be affecting the gun community if they do regulate bump stocks? Are they going to stop at bump stocks? Or are they going to go after something else? I'll go with Clover on that one.
Well, something that hadn't been brought up yet is slide fire closing its doors.
True.
Right?
Yep. That
was just rolling over, right? It was just, what else can you call that? That was weird when that happened. Did they know something that nobody else knew? Were they, companies make deals and talk to politicians and do things all the time. That happens pretty regularly. So, they already been talking to somebody and somebody said, hey, it's inevitable. It is coming. You might as well do it now. And then that makes you look good in the eyes of everybody. And then we can also use that as political clout that, see, they even closed the doors because they thought they were doing something wrong. Or providing a dangerous item to the general public or something. So, that's certainly a weird ordeal. I don't know. It hadn't come down yet. He says 2 or 3 weeks. We'll see. And then, who wrote the changes or rewrote the changes, that's going to make, that's going to make a difference. If it was a politician or a bureaucrat, that could be very, very troubling. If the ATF is the one that maybe, wrote some things in there, then it may not be, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's an infringement, so it can be bad and still not be as bad, correct? So that may not be as bad as we might think. And then going forward, I mean, should everything play out and they ride in a ban or however they do it, you've already seen it with other states, and I can't believe they're not looking at this, that it's a non-enforceable issue. And in order to enforce it, I mean, good grief, look how hairy that situation gets.
Well, we were talking about Boston or Massachusetts, and they did one, and I want to, it's been a few months since we brought it up, but at one point, like 6 weeks or 2 months after that took place, I think they had like 11 people or 7 people, some absurd low amount of number that had complied with the ban. So I thought that was hilarious. It just comes right there. The politicians can put whatever they want out there, and if it's voted upon by the public and it passes, it is what it is. But like you said, who's going to go enforce this?
Here's the beef I have. I'm going to catch some heat for this, but I don't care, because I'm talking about the powers that they have. Talking about the president and what they've done in the past. You talk about all this other stuff. Writing that into some kind of an ATF thing or whatever. And again, we don't know how this is going to be written. The federal government has banned, in the sense of the manufacture of said items, right? Manufacture and sale or importation. They ban stuff pretty regular. The gleaming example that sticks in my mind is lawn darts, right?
That's a good one.
If you got them, you can get out in the yard and play with them, right? So, I don't know. I guess because everything nowadays is so polarized and so politicized, I guess that's why they go the route of like, we're going to confiscate and take them all away from everybody. If they wanted to go through and play this game and they were truly, concerned and thought they were some type of safety risk or a public risk or something like that, I don't know why they didn't go through the measures of a manufacturing ban on them. And to that point, now that we're talking about that, I brought up slide fire before. Maybe that's where the ATF is going with this. Maybe they're going with a manufacturing ban, and slide fire just wanted the preemptive thing that they didn't want a big bunch of stock left over and all this other stuff. When the ATF come out and said, "Hey, you can't sell these no more."
Yeah. Now, Sparky put a nice comment out there that's really interesting. He says Florida is talking about making all ammo purchases through law enforcement agencies. I hadn't heard that one. That's interesting. That would be really.
Yeah, maybe some kind of some kind of letter of permission, but as far as them selling it to you,
I don't department to buy ammo. If
I don't see how that's going to work. That's crazy talk there.
It is. Now I can understand someone. I'm not saying understand how they do it, but I can understand the anti-gun people out there wanting to maybe regulate or register ammo purchases where
be licensed to purchase it, and you get that license, or the local law enforcement or whatever has to sign off on that. Okay, I get you, but going there to actually buy your ammunition, and we got to be real careful. That's why I said we got to be real careful what roads we go down when we're talking about this, without anything black and white in front of us, without any language, without anything to go on, because that is the problem a lot of time. There was some chatter earlier about red flag laws and other things, and there's a lot of stuff out there that people get really overwhelmed and hyped up, and they blow things way out of proportion, and they don't have the black and white in front of them to look at and scrutinize and say, okay, what does this really mean?
Rich out there says in Florida, making ammo have to be purchased through law enforcement would be no different than Pennsylvania saying alcohol has to be bought through the state. They'll do it if they can. Yeah, and like I said, I mean, I haven't seen that. What's that?
There's a difference. There's no constitutional right there's no part of the Constitution that protects your right to drink. There was a prohibition for a while and they removed it, but we have an inherent right and the Constitution protects that right. So it's a little different.
They're bringing up some red flag laws, and that's one of the things that I wanted to touch on. And this has been something that I think could be the biggest overall that has happened as far as legislation, because a lot of states have brought up numerous times red flag laws. And a lot of that came from a combination of Vegas and a combination of Parkland and other incidents. But when you start talking about red flag laws, this is where I think it gets really, really scary, because a way that a lot of these states are writing these bills for red flag laws is there doesn't have to be any medical determination from a doctor. A lot of it could be, hey, this is Johnny and Bill's acting crazy. And that could be as simple as that, to be able to kind of infringe on the rights of gun owners in America. And so let's kind of talk about now, Tar, you're up in Michigan. Since you've been there, I want to say this because you've kind of been in both in the last year. What are the differences as far as Michigan versus Texas in the climate of proposed gun control? Have you noticed anything weird up in Michigan happening since you've left Texas?
As far as the climate, I mean, there's a real strong gun culture up here in Michigan. It's that when you start looking at places that are trying to get ridiculous with gun laws and are a little more anti-gun or a lot more anti-gun, you're looking at places like Detroit or maybe even Flint. You know, your main areas, your suburban, or urban areas of Detroit, the main place everybody thinks about. But when you start getting outside of there, like where we're at, you're looking at a lot of conservatives that are very much in the gun culture, and a lot of people that are libertarian or anything. They're just really heavily into the gun culture because it's a lot of farmland, a lot of backwoods. So there's a lot of people that are still really into it, and they're not very trusting of the government entirely. So they still cling strongly to the Second Amendment ideal of, you know, where it's there to stop tyranny if it were so needed. Now, as far as laws being pushed, I haven't heard of anything new, but I know Detroit itself, county-wise, they've had some stuff going on. But yeah, it's not that different from being in Texas. You know, Texas had the same issue. You get into Dallas, you get into Austin, you get into San Antonio and the major metropolitan areas, you start seeing a more anti-gun crowd than you would in, you know, the outskirts of those areas. So it's not a big jump. Now, as far as the laws that are already on the books, there are some major differences from what I've been reading up compared to Texas. Texas was really lenient on purchases and everything else, and there's a couple things Michigan does a little bit differently that I'm still trying to get used to and adapt to.
Now, Calaveras out there says that in California, there's trying to make background checks for ammo purchases. So are you talking like having to fill out a 4473 for ammo purchases, Cal? Or, I mean, how exactly would that work?
Let's not forget that the 1968 Gun Control Act required that they record all ammunition purchases nationally, and it wasn't until the Gun Owners Protection Act of '86 that they stopped that. So we did live under that infringement for a bit. Not quite 4473, but they kept track of who bought ammo.
It was recorded, but did you actually have to go through a background check for it, or was it just recorded? Yeah,
no, it was just, but there was basically the concept that somehow by regulating or monitoring ammunition, that somehow, what, safety? Question mark?
Yeah, that's absolutely.
Oh, I was going to say, to add on to that part of it, what he's probably talking about, it's a similar thing there. That's why I brought up Detroit. that Wayne County, which is where Detroit's at, what they're trying to do. They got the county commissioner pushing for a law where you got to do background checks to get your ammunition. You actually have to go to the sheriff's office or your local police department and there's not a lot of detail on what the background check entails, but they have a little background check they're going to do, basically make sure you're not crazy or whatever else. And then you're going to get your little slip or whatever saying you're good. And then you can go buy your ammo. I don't know how long it lasts, but you can get it and you go buy your ammo. And then you're supposed to do it every time before you go buy ammunition. And then they make an exception where if you're going to a gun show, as long as you have an old one to prove it, you can buy all the ammo you want at the gun show. So more or less for their little ammunition law there, they're making a gun show loophole for their ammo. But it's all a stupid law that they're trying to pass for stupid reasons, more or less.
Now Clover is having a discussion out there, and I was going to bring it up anyways, but I liked your comment, and someone was mentioning about red flag laws being unconstitutional because they deprive you of due process. And do you want to bring that up and talk about that or no?
Yeah, my point to that, and then thanks for the floor, because I was fixing to reply to that. My point to that is they don't have to be. And I think we do a real disservice to the community when we pound our fist and holler, no red flag laws and all this, because we're being really insensitive to a mental illness aspect in this country that needs to be addressed. Mental illness aspect in society that needs to be addressed. And by just pounding our fist and saying, no way, it's all unconstitutional, there's ways and there's processes, or is it processes, however, that can be done that would make it completely constitutional to be able to do things like that. But ultimately, and this is the sad part, okay, sometimes you reap the freaking whirlwind, people. And this is what I've been preaching for the longest, and you can't make people understand it. And I see people in daily life. I see them, whether I'm talking on the phone, it's in these chats, it's online on any social media. I see it where it's the people that have no sympathy, empathy, or compassion for anybody around in the community or whatever it might be. And quick plug on the John Stossel channel. He did a deal on mental illness in this country and dealing with them closing down asylums years and years ago and how the numbers have fluctuated and all that good kind of stuff. A lot of the political red tape, or bureaucratic red tape, having to do with mental illness. So it's a really good one. Not very long. Jump over there and watch it. It's pretty good. But you know, it boils down to us first and foremost to deal with this issue, and just scream into the top of our lungs about these red flag laws it's not garnering any points. It's the same as standing there and screaming shall not be infringed. You know, we've got to have a conversation. You know, red flag laws are unconstitutional. Okay, now my position is they don't have to be. So where do we go from there? Right? Now let's start working forward and figuring out how we figure this out. But it's like everybody, they want it one way or the other, right? There's like the compromise has become a bad thing. And there's certain things like that I think that can be compromised on. We certainly don't need to compromise due process for sure. But if there's a process involved in that, why can't we have that conversation and make that happen? Unless society wants to change. And right now I'm speaking to society at large. So, hey, if everybody wants to man up and take care of your neighbors and pay attention to their mental health and, you know, help them out when they're feeling down and whatever, then we don't need stuff like that. But, you know, as society becomes crappier and crappier as far as the caliber of people in it, you're going to have more and more people cry, we need to do something. And then, unfortunately, you've got politicians that know nothing that turn around and do exactly what the people want. They do something. And unfortunately, for those of us that do care and are out here and are sane and are compassionate and empathetic and whatever to our fellow man, that hurts us.
Chris or Mike or anyone, you have anything to reply to that real quick?
Yeah. Just like Clover said, everything he said was 100% accurate, but people need to actually get more active doing hands-on, talking to the people in the area, you know, who's going to actually control who writes what and to vote. But at the same time, get active, get more active, exercise your rights to keep your rights.
Yeah,
Chris,
yeah, I'd say part of what Clover said that I'm 100% with is the responsibility of being a gun owner, a firearms enthusiast, somebody who's involved in anything Second Amendment, is recognizing when whoever, relative, neighbor, somebody who's aging, somebody who's took a bad turn, an alcoholic, whatever it is, like recognizing those situations and calling them for what they are, and figuring out how to make it safe for everybody. I think that's a big part of the responsibility we all hold as people who are in this. I think Clover was dead on with that.
Yeah. Doc out there was saying that for someone that does suffer with mental illness at times, red flag laws scare the hell out of him. Now, Ashley brings up a couple of good points. And the first one says, so put a restriction on civilians, but the officer with PTSD gets a gun to walk the streets. And then she comes back down here and just says, let me go back and find it. She says, what the whole red flag laws come down to is they need to treat mental illness just as they would cancer or another ailment. There is such a lack of treatment. And that is so true. I've known people with PTSD, friends of mine that have suffered through it. And, whether it's PTSD or any other kind of mental ailment, it is treatable. It is maybe not curable all the time, but it is treatable. And there are many different levels of being able to live with these illnesses. Just because you hear mental illness doesn't mean that they're psychotic. It doesn't mean that they are going to go out and flip a switch. They're not bipolar all the time. It's just something that people go through traumatic experiences, and they might not be in a great mental state of frame of mind for a little bit, but with treatment and time and support, most people can come out of this. So just to put everybody in a box and say, well, if you've ever taken an antidepressant, then you're no longer able to own guns because, you went through a crazy time in high school through puberty and your parents put you on antidepressant, and something you did at 16 years old is going to affect the rest of your life being own a gun. So yeah, I think that there are varying levels of what we need to talk about. But the truth is also is if they're going to write something that has to do with mental illness, then let's make sure that they're being at least treated and given at least a chance to come back from it and say, this person has worked hard and has gotten out of whatever hole they are in, and they no longer, as far as the law goes and the politicians go, they no longer pose a threat on society. So I think that for someone to have any kind of mental illness and be kind of thrown into a cage and the key being thrown away forever is absurd. So that being said, yeah, I agree with you guys. Being able to handle different situations. There are people that can handle major stress and handle it okay. There are some people that the littlest thing can set them off. Which one's better? Which one's worse? Which one can be dealt with? Which one can be cured? Which one can be, there's all sorts of questions. And I think until all of these answers are brought up and these questions are brought up, the fact that they're trying to put this into laws is just absolutely absurd. I'm not saying that we should let anyone that's had a criminal record or been dealt with a mental illness have a gun. But I think that before we throw away the key, we need to figure out to what level they are and if there's anything that can be done, because a lot of people are asking for help and either can't get it or are, some people we obviously know need help and they're not willing to take that help. That's a more of a problem than someone who's actually trying to fix whatever ailment they have or whatever problem they have. They're working hard to get past it. That's someone that needs to be applauded and not stripped of their rights. So there's my soapbox. And we have to have the conversation about what we're talking about with mental health. I mean, you've got
mild issues, you've got medium issues, and you've got severe issues.
Right.
You know, if I'm just, if I'm blue because it's really rainy, which I tend to get, that's not anything that's not going to be better when the sunshine comes out. That's not anything that's threatening to my life and livelihood, but it's kind of a form of depression in a way. That we go into SHOT Show or NRA and we're all this anxiety with, going and doing all these cool new things or whatever it might be in any type of endeavor, right? Personal challenge match I shot a little while back. I had anxiety. That didn't mean it was something I couldn't deal with or whatever. So, there's certain levels, and it falls on us to be aware and kind of be able to tell that, okay, this particular individual or person is, all of this is going on, and okay, he's handling it well. I mean, his day to day is not really bothered by it, whatever. Or wait a minute, there's something different. I mean, he doesn't say hello in the morning when he walks by, or something's up. And for us to be more aware of everything around us, I think.
Yep. Now, Budget out there was saying they don't understand that in order for it to be a true compromise, both sides have to give something up. And I think that this is where I think most people that are actively promoting and trying to support the Second Amendment come into play. Is it seems like we're always the ones compromising. We're always the ones being forced to give something up. And why doesn't the other side ever give something up? And I want to bring in G real quick, because he brought up a thing a couple of days ago in one of his talks, maybe it was Daily Gun Show or something, about, why haven't we tried to go get the NFA repealed, or why have we not tried to get suppressors off the ATF regulations or whatever? And why is it that seems like, and I think they're right, why is it that it seems like we're always having the one to be the ones that give something up, and why they're not ever willing to give us up? It's a compromise. Exactly. And your Budget was right. But what do you think the reason for that is, G?
Well, it's kind of back and forth on hoping you wouldn't even call on me. If I was hoping to get gizzarded on this one, but
oh yeah, we can gizzard you.
My perspective is going to sound dispassionate, I expect, or callous. But when I look at the whole thing, right, the big picture, we're going to say from big perspective, they have strategists, and they know what they've tried, and they know it was successful. They know it didn't work. They still remember 94. Let's not forget 94. And the response that they got to the assault weapons ban was 10 years of silence, because we had such, like Mike says, the voters told them what's for. There was consequences for their irresponsible actions. So again, knowing that they have strategists and they have agendas, what better thing to sink your teeth into than mental health? It's not black and white like law. It's not a piece of equipment or a piece of plastic. It's completely gray area. And you guys have all touched on it. I don't need to repeat, but everybody knows that this is the most difficult thing to even talk about as far as the society. And when they get to put the gun part in, plug a gun part into it, we're giving them free reign. So I'm going to just end it with, like Clover said, there's different it's such a cloudy thing that people can go up and down in their lives and in their emotions and stuff. But honestly, if the logical conclusion to being upset was murder, we would, how they say, if gun owners were a problem, you'd know it. If mental health resulted in death, we would know that, and we wouldn't be having these discussions. They are able to take lightning strikes, less than lightning strikes, and magnify them to the point where they've created a narrative, they've created an ambush for us where something happened. See, it's a consequence of this. And we don't question their logic. We don't question that as a group. Instead, we start to defend, and we start to run around and create all these, responses to their ambush. So I'd like to look at it a bigger perspective. Like I say, it's callous, but to step back and say, these are attacks that they've contemplated and they've maneuvered so that now they get to reap the benefits of it. And I think we're doing ourselves as a community a disservice by lending them validity by discussing this. I mean, I'm not just saying we shouldn't discuss it, but you know what I mean, but by giving them validity responding to this, where I think if we were to in lockstep say, first prove that this is the logical consequence of mental illness, and you know, require them to bring evidence to the table. They brought emotion and they bring, you know, atrocities. Tragedies are things that happen without, you know, without intent. Atrocities are an individual who decides what to do. They create a situation where they make everyone infamous, and all you have to do is get onto the national scene. It's some horrible thing, and if you pick the right implement, you're infamous forever. And they've created this situation. They'll stand back and say, "Oh, it's not us; it's society," and we don't question them on that. So how do they? To answer your question, how do they do it? By looking at it in the long run, and they don't need to compromise because they set up ambushes for us where we don't do an effective job of working in unity to question the validity of their statement or their position.
Okay. There's a couple interesting comments out there. Yeah. No, I think you're right.
Can I throw one thing in from Clover's a bit ago? I did get gizzarded on that. I didn't want to interrupt because you guys all had valid stuff, but I think what Clover was kind of going for there, at least what I was gleaning from it, was if Trump does decide to go through with this from the executive side, it's either going to be an executive action, which we know can be overridden by the next president, or with enough resistance to it, or if they change it inside the ATF, that's not law. So it's reversible. So I think what Clover was kind of going for there is that let's see what they do. And, you know, let's say he does something on the executive branch side, then maybe that's something that we can rally the troops behind and say, not one more inch. You've already done this with street sweepers. You've done this with the importation of barrels. You've done this with, you know, randomly declaring things that have bimetal armor piercing. You know, stop. We stopped it with the M855. Let's remember that.
Right. No, I hear you. And there's talking about, and Blue Steel out there is talking, he says, do you know what percentage of SPMI who are actually violent? Next to none of them. I don't. I mean, I'm not a medical. I've never been in the medical field, so I'm not trying to pass this off or talking statistics about something I don't know. I'm talking in generalities. When you start talking about mental illness, that's a very, very dangerous gate to open when you talk about rights, because what is considered a mental illness? What is considered someone to be put in a position to where their mental illness now makes them dangerous?
I know I can tell you this. I can tell you that
you got to deal with this, Clover. I mean,
I can tell you that growing up, I had numerous friends, one of which we were hanging out on the town square, went home the next morning. I wake up and going to pick him up from school. I dropped him off at home that night. He was no longer with us. He opted to end his life that night. I mean, like shortly after I dropped him off. I've had that happen with friends, as well as family members over the year. I'm probably not alone. There's probably multiple people that have seen that happen. I was young at the time. I didn't really understand a lot of different things, but in growing older, I've started to understand how to identify things and see that people are having issues. And, you know, what can I help? Can we go? Let's go have lunch. Let's go, you know, whatever. Right. And I've had 2 instances with family in my grown life that I've had to take the guns away.
Yep.
You know, one got them back. One will probably never get them back. That's as far as I'll go. If anybody wants to talk privately, I'm good with it. Give me a call. But, you know, that's all I'm going to say, you know, as far as information divulging that. But I've had 2 instances. So, you know, does anybody else do that? And, you know, that it's not a matter. There's a little bit of hypocrisy with people sometimes. So, you know, I think when you're thinking about this, you have to check yourself a little bit, because they go, well, we're the only side that compromises. But then when you holler, show up being fringe or red flag law, when you're sitting down at the table, well, you've already made that assertion that you don't plan on compromising because they don't plan on compromising, right? And 2 wrongs don't make a right. So you at least got to sit down and try to have that conversation, and you've got to try to be open to something. If they see that you're open, maybe they'll be open. If they don't do anything but, you know, stalwart and close off, and, you know, they're blatantly, opposed to any type of compromise, then you walk away from the table at that point and go, okay, there's no compromise here because I'm not giving anything if you don't. But you don't sit down with the idea that, they're going to run the show or you're going to have to give everything up, and be kind of aggressive with it. Coming to the table aggressive, I don't think is the way to deal with anything.
Right. No, and I think that that's a really good point because the compromise, very, 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 very few times once something's put down into law, very, very few times does it ever get taken out. So that being said, I think the compromise, and I think you hit the nail right on the head, Clove, is when we start talking compromise, the compromise doesn't necessarily, no, we can try to try to get things repealed and try to get things to be this SCOTUS and deemed unconstitutional. We need to continue to try that fight. But the big compromise needs to sit down, like you said, while these bills are being written out. And if there is a big enough push from one side or the other for a specific item, then they need to go down there as a bipartisan group and say, we recognize there is a need for this bill. But before we present it, let's make sure we do all of our research. Let's make sure we go through all the avenues that are available to us and find out the root of what can happen. Can it be treated or whatever the scenario is, and compromise in a way that it is okay for everyone? Because right now what's happening with a lot of these bills is one party's writing a bill and they're going to vote down party lines, yay or nay. Well, wouldn't it be great if they actually got in the same room and said, we've got this bill here, and the other side says, I think that's a crazy bill. Well, what do you think can you at least acknowledge there's a problem? Yes, I can at least acknowledge there's a problem. So what can we do to fix this problem and get in a room and actually come up with a bill that makes sense and is fair? That's, I think, where the compromise needs to happen. Will it happen? I don't know in today's climate in the political arena. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Now, Tardot and Chris and Mike, y'all are being kind of quiet. Do you guys have anything else to talk about the mental illness side or the legislation side before we start kind of sweeping up here?
The last thing I want to add is that if legislation were going to fix horrendous crimes, it already would have. Murder is illegal. Taking away more things from law-abiding citizens is change that. And that's where I have a hard time moving from. Like, don't kill people. I think it's already done. That part is illegal. So anything past that is semantics and tends to just be an attack on us, the people who are not committing murder. And that, I think that's where a lot of the frustration and just like stonewalling starts to happen, because I don't know where to go from there.
Right. No, I hear you. Mike, you got anything?
The only thing I can honestly say is the same thing I've been saying all night. Just exercise your right, get out there, vote, do the research before you listen to somebody talk about something. Like we talked about mental illness, but there are many facets to mental illness, and just like Clove said, he had anxiety on the range, but that doesn't mean he's mentally ill. That just means he had a situation that overwhelmed him at that time, That's
right.
But it's just when people listen to the facets of society behind the TV, it takes it to a whole different realm, and everything is thrown out of proportion because people are not doing their research or actually getting involved. And that's how the system was designed, that you have to get involved in order for it to evolve, because if you don't, it's going to get taken over.
Now, Brenda out there says, I think that we were specifically talking with people with PTSD can be effectively treated. There's a huge difference between psychosis and neurosis. Unfortunately, when we speak of having adjudication, it's not. And that's a great point. And I want to bring out, and I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but I mean, it's a public show, so you can go back and watch. But Leonidas and Squib both say that they're out because they don't like the direction that this chat's going. And I get that. That's fine. We're not always going to agree. And I do agree with who was it out there? I think David Bowen was saying, you know, we need to be able to talk about this amongst ourselves and have discussions to bring up other sides. And here's the problem that I have with the gun community is we are divided. We have the howl at the moon shall not be infringed over here. And you have the people that are heavily involved or want to be heavily involved, but may not be the shall not be infringed. And we are fighting amongst ourselves. That is the biggest problem. This was what I was going to bring up. This, in my eyes, is the singular biggest problem that the gun community has had since Las Vegas. And it goes well beyond the Las Vegas thing. But we've had so much infighting amongst ourselves because we have people that are going to get riled up and say, shall not be infringed. And then you have another group that's going to sit there and say, well, let's look at this and let's be a rational thinker and all that. And neither one of them are right and neither one of them are wrong. But we have so much infighting going on within our own ranks. How could we ever possibly fight on a major scale anyone fighting against us? And that's what's driving me crazy because today is every second matters. And I want to go to G real quick and what can we do is there anything that we can do to help stop the infighting within our own community? Uh-oh. All right. Mike or Tardot, Chris, Clover, anybody jump in.
All right. Repeat the question one more time.
What do you guys think? What's that?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, my biggest thing is we were talking about the biggest problems, and my biggest problem with the gun community since Vegas is the internal fighting amongst ourselves. It's like you either have to be shall not be infringed, or you have to be willing to look at things logically. Why can't we ever get along? Because there's infighting. People will say, well, he's not a real gun person because of this, or he's not a real gun person because of this. And there's no right or wrong way, but we have a lot of people that are fighting amongst ourselves, and we're actually adding fuel to the fire for the other side. They're laughing at us to some extent. What can we do to maybe mend that fracture that's within our own community?
I do believe that a lot of it is we have to come together on matters outside of guns. So once we get a social dynamic together, now we can move forward and bring in the next topic, which is guns. But until we come together as a whole on other matters involved in our nation together, but as long as we have that divide, it's always going to be that divide across multiple sectors. But we have to come together outside of guns before we can actually come together within the gun community as well.
Mateo out there says the problem that the left is playing a long game with the goal of eliminating gun rights. The right is playing a short game that stops and starts with each legislative push. I tend to agree with that to a certain extent.
Yep.
And hold on real quick and I'll get back to you. But Hemi says, why is shall not be infringed logical? I never said it wasn't logical. I never said that shall not be infringed isn't logical. What I'm saying to you is we have two different sides within the gun group. You have the shall not be infringed, and you have the people that are not necessarily shall not be infringed. And how can we get those two groups together to make one big army instead of splitting our army in divided ways? Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying amen to what he said. To Hemi's point, he's, why is it not logical? It's not that for me, I mean, I'm not going to say it's not logical, man. It makes perfect sense. But, the problem is you lead off with that, people don't understand that. There's many people, the vast majority of people, they don't get that. They don't understand that. They can't even recite to you the Second Amendment. If you asked them what the Second Amendment was, they probably couldn't even tell you it's about guns. So, when you lead off with that, you're just blowing nonsense at them. So it doesn't do any good. I mean, you need to find the commonality to talk about actual issues and have that conversation, I think. That's where screaming that does any good. I want to, this is not necessarily a challenge, but in a way, I guess it's a challenge because I'm just curious. You get a lot of talk. A lot of people talk the talk, but then they don't walk the walk. And that's in multiple facets of life. So for anybody that's staring in the barrel of a red flag law, because we've discussed that, or maybe you already have them in your state. Ask yourself this question and be honest with yourself. Would you donate an hour's time a week to go sit with somebody that was having some kind of issues that maybe just needed somebody to talk to? If an organization moved into your state and they said, okay, here's this organization, but we've got to run on donated time. We can't afford to pay people, right? This is not government funded. But what we're going to do is we're going to seek out and we're going to identify people in your community that just need somebody to talk with. They need to talk with and try to work through issues. Okay, to get rid of those red flag laws, would you donate an hour of your time a week? Would you donate 2 hours of your time a week? Would you donate an hour a day worth of your time a week? Where's the line in that, right? How much would you be willing to do to help your fellow man to keep the government from thinking that they had to do anything about it?
No, yeah, that's, you know, there was a wise leprechaun that once said in a faraway chat that says, if you never do anything, you will never fail. Saw that in the side chat. That was a good quote. I wanted to bring that up. That is, well, and I think a lot of it is I think there's a lot of people, and I'll even put myself in this. I think we all can put ourselves in this to some extent, that are upset about things that happen, but aren't able to or willing to put that line in the sand and say, don't cross this line. If you do, I'm going to start fighting back or whatever. I think a lot of us have the ideas that we'd love to be more. Some people are actually doing more than others, and I don't do as much as I could or should. I think there are a lot of people that are out there doing some really, really good work. I mean, G drives around in a van all over the country spreading the gospel and doing so many good things out there. I can't do that. I wish I could. I wish I could do more. And the problem is sometimes I have the ability or the time to do more, and I don't. I choose my life sometimes over that. And so not an excuse, but I'll take that heat also. I don't do as much as I could. I think that's a great idea, is if everyone kind of looks themselves in the mirror and say, what have you done? You know, talking is one thing, but doing is another thing. Maybe that is something that we can all try to spend, you know, an hour a week or an hour a month more than we normally have to try to get more involved in making a difference locally or at the state level. I think that's a wonderful idea. So,
and not just in Second Amendment stuff.
No, I understand exactly. Just
you know, we don't affect societal change by micro focusing on the Second Amendment issue. That's not how you affect societal change.
Right. Yeah. No, and Hemi's out there. He's racist. I think that a lot of this 2A community are sick and tired of giving the other side always taking and wanting more. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of people. I think we all are. I think that to some extent, everyone who considers themselves a gun advocate or more, not just a social, you know, hey, I've got a gun and this and the other. I'm talking about someone that's actually trying to be involved and entrenched in the gun community themselves. I think we're all sick and tired of it feeling like we're taking 2 steps back every time we take a step forward. And I think there's a lot of that has to be done more at the local level. I think something that we can do in our towns and our cities and obviously our states, and maybe that wave carries on to the federal and national level.
Can I throw something in there?
Of course.
50 states have CCW. I always get discouraged when I hear people say we never win. We win all the time. Let's acknowledge our wins. And when we get a black eye, I mean, what happens in a fight? You get punched once and you say, oh, I lost the fight. Or do you get knocked down a whole bunch of times and you keep getting up? And, you know, let's not forget that we aren't always losing. And we're not getting as much as we'd like all the time. But I'm going to throw that out there. So we're not always losing. We're doing good work.
I think that, yeah, you're right. I mean, because, you know, we've had some legislation brought up in the past year that would basically at the state level try to basically ban semi-automatic weapons as a whole, and or at least make it really, really difficult to do anything with them. And they have all failed miserably. So yeah, I think that there are certain things that you have to look at and it's more at the local and state level. I think that's why these midterm elections are so crucial, because you're talking governors, you're talking state representatives, you're talking state senators, you're talking at the federal level, you're talking some Senate seats that are up that could be very crucial. So I know that Mike's been doing some really good work on trying to get voter registration out there, and we can talk about this for days and days to come. But the most important thing is if we all, like, I'm going to take Clovers and go. Can we all take an hour a week or a month or whatever you can spare to try to do more and get more involved politically, maybe in your town, your city, your state, or whatever. And maybe we're a little more educated and we're a little more influenced by what we're looking for. But if nothing else, make sure that before you go vote in November, that you actually know the person that you're voting for, what they truly stand for. That means calling them, trying to talk with them, go to a rally. And if you can go to a rally, maybe get 5 minutes or a minute with them and just ask them a couple questions, but actually try to find out what these people stand for, because they're the ones representing you. They're the ones that are going to be putting their ideas into these bills and legislations, that if they don't line up with you, then just because they're an incumbent, they've been there for 35 years, doesn't mean that you should keep voting for them. So make sure you're doing your homework. And it's almost been an hour and a half, so I want to run through the room. Before we do that, I want to say with Chris or with Tardot or Mike or anyone, do you have anything that on this subject that you want to talk about before we start closing the doors?
Only thing I will say is go register. You have a few days. If you just moved to a new state, that you have to be in your location for 30 days before you're eligible to vote if you move from one state to the next state. So if you haven't registered, go register. Right? It's that easy. Just go register and do your research of who you want to register. Who you want to vote for, and put it into action.
Right.
Can I add on to Mike's? Because I think that's an excellent point. We've all got voices too. We have families, we have people we work with, people we go to church or civic organizations with, and having conversations that might not be always comfortable. It is every second matters, right? After all, it's something we've been doing since the end of 2013, when we saw the apathy begin after the initial resistance to Obama's 23 executive actions. So like Mike said, the voter is really the power in this country, and the system works. So, instead of just considering yourself one vote, you're one vote with a voice, and we have influence over people around us. And as ambassadors to the shooting and the Second Amendment, let's have some conversations that might be difficult sometimes, when appropriate, and try to at least open people's minds to the potential, like we've been saying.
Yeah, I like it. Let's go through the room real quick and plug what you guys want to plug. Chris, I want to give you the floor for a little bit and talk about anything that you want to talk about, and also Tactical Walls, obviously, and what you're doing. And I don't know if you want to talk about what you're doing right now or where you are, but if you want to, go for it and have the floor for a minute or two.
Awesome. First of all, just thanks for having me again. As always, a phenomenal conversation and a lot of points that I hadn't even realized that I didn't consider yet. So, anytime you can do that, that's great for personal growth. And thank you guys. So for those not familiar, Tactical Walls, we make furniture with secret compartments in it designed to give you quick access to defensive tools where you actually spend your time. Check us out, tacticalwalls.com, all the social medias. We make everything in Virginia. So good American-made furniture. I'm on the road right now I got some sales stuff, but then this weekend I'm working the Well-Armed Woman Leadership Conference, which I'm really excited about. And I think that's a prime example of the kind of organizations we need to see more of, just including more people in our community, kind of killing the stereotype of it just being the good old boys club, and making it more accessible. Freedom's for everybody, so let's encourage that any way you can. And Well-Armed Woman is one of the best organizations I've seen to do that and really help empower people who maybe didn't feel that connection before. So.
All right. I just want to say hey to Hemi and Hottie and all them. They're saying hey. No, and you guys go check out tacticalwalls.com. You know, I've got a shelf unit that's awesome. That might have been, man, that's a couple 2 or 3 years ago. So it's in great shape. Obviously, it's durable and all that. But I love the fact that you're up in talking to different organizations, not just the business side, because you understand reaching out and bringing other people to the gun community. And right now, you know, with the women, that is a huge demographic that I think needs to be explored and brought into us. There are a lot of women out there that are very pro gun. There are a lot of women out there that don't know if they are because they've never really had the opportunity or the voice and all that. So that is a demographic out there that is huge to our gun community. And I'm going to go along with saying what Clover is saying. It's not the hard left that we're fighting. We're not going to change their minds. It's the people in the middle. And there are a large number of people that if we can start swaying 10% of those people, we win. And I think that that's exactly what you're doing. You're trying to go after that middle group and that demographic that really has never had too much of a voice within our community. So kudos to you, Chris. I appreciate you. And dude, anytime you want to come on, like, you know, this wasn't coming on talking about tactical walls. If you just want to come on and hang out with us like you are this week and be part of the conversation, you're always welcome, my man.
I truly appreciate it. I'm really glad this worked out. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, anytime, man. Just let me know if you ever get a chance you want to hop on. You'll always get a link. So I appreciate you. Tardot, what's going on, my man? How is everything up in Michigan? You guys getting settled in? And what's you got going on the channel? You want to plug anything?
Yeah, we're getting settled in, and you know, the only thing I've got to plug right now is I'm going to have some videos dropping this week. One, hopefully tomorrow. And me and Gunpowder have been talking, and coming up, we're actually going to be making some changes to both of our channels where we're actually going to combine efforts. And actually, it's going to be my channel is going to be changing titles and becoming TD3 Media. And it's going to be the both of us on that channel, and she's going to be using her other channel for some of the other content that she does outside of like Second Amendment and gun stuff and all that. So we're gonna be combining efforts. We're gonna be making a big push to do more live streams and less produced content. But we got to look at the schedule. A lot of this isn't going to be happening right away, but it's going to be probably over the course of the next month. We're going to be getting a lot of this in place. But yeah, be keeping an eye on the channel. We're going to be doing a lot more couples and family content.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Interesting. So yeah, looking forward to that for sure. Mike, you got 27 seconds and go.
All right. First of all, make sure you go check me out on the Black Man with the Gun podcast that comes out every week with me and Ken Blanchard. If you haven't done so, please visit www.m-wtactical.com. Give me a phone call at 803-250-1256. Leave a voicemail or a text message, and I promise I'll get back to you. If you want me to do a product review or you just want to talk, please call that phone number or email me at info@m-wtactical.com. Every Tuesday, I put out a video, and today we put out a new video on the Haley Strategic D3 Sling. And you can check that video out on GunTube, UGEtube, and YouTube under M-W Tactical, GunStreamer under Munitions Weapons Tactical. Go follow me on Facebook and Instagram under M-W Tactical. And we still got our GoFundMe campaign going. So please go to GoFundMe.com/M-W Tactical and check out the video and read the information in there and help us out if you can. 26 seconds.
Holy cow, he broke it. Good job. Now, you know what's going to happen next week? It's going to be down to 25. So we're going to have to. No, go check out Mike and Italy Tag. He's doing some awesome work. And go check out the Black Man with a Gun podcast. Phenomenal, him and Kim Blanchard. So, yeah, you're doing a lot of great work. And I guess I'm most proud of, you know, you are the one that seems to be really out there in the community, not only with getting voter registration, but you're doing the youth camp. You're trying to get the deputies in with jiu-jitsu for free. So you're out there and you are putting, you know, your actions where your mouth is, and you're walking the walk. So kudos to you. And if your guys are out there, go support him at the GoFundMe, especially if you're in the Columbia, South Carolina. This guy's out there doing real work in his community in the Columbia, South Carolina area. So go check him out. If you're out there, you're listening later on, go check out MW Tactical and Michael Woodland. He's doing a great thing. G Webs, what's going on?
Well, dude, it's been a pleasure being on a podcast with real people. Mike, I want to reiterate everything you said. I mean, talk about putting boots on the ground. We have to do a show sometime where we just talk to Mike about how he keeps it all organized. I mean, a national podcast, his projects, and like you say, community service. It's freaking awesome. Clover, you, Ghost, obviously real dudes, Tardot, keeping it real and putting out valuable content. Chris, I don't know you, but I know that I see Tactical Walls sponsoring all kinds of awesome events. So for as far as the company making stuff in the USA and keeping our community going, it's awesome. I also want to say thanks to Roosted. So if you guys haven't checked out Roosted channel, he just gave me a whole bunch of cool Minnesota Apple products here. You've been keeping Marshmallow happy, and value your efforts out there. The people that are watching this, I know are creating content, a lot of you. And if you saw the AmCon, the QA media thing at the Gun Rights Policy Conference, those people are doing valid, honest work, but they aren't savvy on every aspect of what we're doing out here. And I'll say it again, you, Ghost, I mean, come on, you've got massive presence. You're mastering these platforms that a lot of people have talked themselves out of. So I love that you guys are doing this, and that you're, like Clover says, if you don't do anything, you're sure to never fail. It's failure that makes us grow and evolve. So thanks everybody. It's been a pleasure being on this panel. It's been excellent. Every second matters, and I'm glad we didn't focus on the negative stuff from that asshole, a year ago.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing, is I didn't want to make it about that asshole. I wanted to try to make it on what's happened in the years since and what can we do to move forward in a positive way. So, no, G, I love having you on. You always bring an awesome, different perspective. And sometimes it's a perspective that may not be the most popular, but you say what needs to be said. And I love that about you. And talk about someone who is literally doing work in the community. This guy is in the midst of his 2018 gun show loophole tour. He's literally driving around the country, going to gun shows, going to gun shops, going to gun right policy conference. He's going to all sorts of things and spreading the Second Amendment love, spreading what the Second Amendment is in America, not just what the media says and not just what we say here. He's going to real towns with real gun shops and real gun shows, and he's trying to spread the word of the Second Amendment to anyone that will listen. So thank you, G. We really appreciate everything you do for us. Please go check out GunChannels.com. Go check out GunWebsites.com, GearWebsites.com. Go support G as much as you can. Go to his Patreon if you're willing to give $1 or $2 a month. Anything you can do to help G out, because he's literally out there driving around spreading Second Amendment love. So thank you so much, G. Clover, what you got? What's that, G? I'm sorry.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, we appreciate you in so many ways. But yeah, Clover, what you got?
Oh, I fell asleep. I think Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had that effect on people.
It was Mike, man. He talks for so long.
He did it in 26 seconds, man. Can you believe
it? 26. Hey, you even gave me 30 last week.
That's long enough to fall asleep, though, man. That's all I gotta say. No, it's a pretty awesome week this week. Dustin Ellerman tomorrow. So, and then Walther in the house on Friday. So, very awesome. I'll be jumping in with Hank Thursday. So. Yeah, I mean, I don't ask for a lot of help very often with a lot of things. At least I don't think that I do. But particularly with Walther on Friday, if you're out there, that's scheduled. It's over there on the channel page. Share the crap out of that. Let's see what we can do, because I was really impressed that they gave a 2-bit guy an opportunity to talk with anybody from their company, right? So.
You're hardly 2-bit, dude. You've got a massive presence and you're efforting. They see that.
Yeah, I understand that, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, that's pretty huge compared to the other ones that's been on Friday. I mean, hands down, an old company, a well-established company. So I'd like to have a good showing for them. So help share that one at least if you can.
Yeah, and for people that aren't really aware of who Dustin Ellerman is, was it season 2 or season 3? I want to say season 3, maybe.
Season 3, yeah.
Season 3 of Top Shot, and if you're familiar with Top Shot, he won that, and he won it convincingly. I mean, I think after maybe the second or third episode, I think it was blatantly clear, at least it was to me, I used to love that show, but it was blatantly clear who the best shot on the show was. And I think even the participants kind of knew that something's going to have to go wrong. Did he even go up for to the
I don't think, and I don't remember now. It's been years ago, but I don't think he did. I don't think he ever was up for elimination. But the finale, I mean, if you've never watched it, you could probably YouTube it or something. I'm sure. You know, go catch the season 3 finale and look at the runaway. I mean, it was just he wrecked shop. He was like all the way through, and the other guy was like on the 3rd stage or something. I mean, it was just insane.
Plus, he's got a tactical walls table, and I like that about him.
Hey, about them apples.
Yeah, he's a good dude. And we're not really going to be talking about. I'm sure he'll field some questions about Top Shot, but you know, I want to focus more on his youth camp and his marksman camps and stuff like that, because he's forever been doing great work. So,
right. Well, guys, I really appreciate everybody tuning in. Like I said, if you're catching this in replay, thank you. Welcome to the channel. If it's your first time, I hope we didn't bore you or scare you away. It is every second matters, and that is something that happens the second of every month, and it should happen every day, but at least once a month we try to get everybody together to talk about the issues and what we can do to grow and to make our community even stronger. It just so happens that it is also, as of yesterday, the 1-year anniversary of a heinous act by a completely evil person that used the tools that we love in a crime, and now we want to talk about where we are a year from that. So, you know, there is evil everywhere, and you're never going to stop evil, but you don't have to blame an instrument or a tool for someone being crazy and doing evil things. They could have decided to use many, many things. They decided to use something that we love dearly, and it became under attack very, very quickly. So thank you for always fighting. Keep up the good fight, and we shall see you next Tuesday on Tactical Tuesday. Thank you for joining. Semper Fi.